die Deutschen müssen jetzt gewinnen. Ich kann jetzt nicht nochmal das dritte Mal die österreichische Nationalhymne hören.
Jetzt sei eigentlich so. Das ist am Ende... Nein, das, wie gesagt, ich glaub da schon fest dran, aber das ist tatsächlich, die sind schon stark. Also da muss man auch tatsächlich neidlos anerkennen, dass Martin Egle denen einfach auch tatsächlich deutlich vorangefahren ist. Ja? Auch wenn der zweite Lauf nicht so perfekt war, da wo die Deutschen noch mal ein bisschen näher rangekommen sind.
Welcome back to Oberhof, Germany. Stop number 7 on the EBERSPÄCHER FIL Luge World Cup. We're getting ready for run number 2 of the men's doubles competition. Hi again, everyone. I'm Tim Singer. 19 nations on hand this weekend. And earlier today, the top 3 after the first run. In third place, the defending World Cup overall champions from Austria, Thomas Stoy and Wolfie Kindle. Some great driving right there in that straightaway by Stoy to keep them in contention. The winners the last time we were in Oberhof were the young German duo of Hannes Orlamunder and Halago Bix. They're in second, but the hottest team in the world is the hottest team of the 21st century. The Olympic champions 3 times over, the 2 Tobis, the Bayern Express. Tobias Ventel, Tobias Alt leading by a wide margin in search of career victory number 56. Right now we bring in Elsa Desmond as we check out the continually warming conditions here. Elsa, not only do we have 19 nations represented, this weekend we have every continent here on the World Cup except Africa. We've got South Americans, we've got Australians, just spreading the wealth, aren't we?
It's amazing to see so many nations coming from all over the world coming into Luge. Certainly more than we were seeing 10 years ago in terms of variety, more of the Asian nations. I believe Nigeria at some point did start to try to build a Luge federation. They had some juniors, but they just haven't managed to make it through into the World Cups yet.
Now, on the subject of nations in the World Cup Luge, you and I were just talking before we hit air, that has there ever been a time that January comes to an end and we're through racing in Europe? That's the case this year.
Not that I've seen in my career. It's fantastic that we're going back to these Asian tracks for the end of the season, out to China, out to Korea. Many of these athletes will have never slid Korea. The last time they were there for seniors was in 2018. So really exciting to see what's going to happen towards the end of this season, going back to those Asian tracks.
Not to mention a stop in Canada on the way east to Korea.
It'll be really interesting to see how many nations we get out to those World Championships. Whistler, famously quite an expensive place for us luge athletes, so it'll be interesting to see if we get as many nations there as we have here this week. Just to look at this POV, we saw this on the first run. These top big corners won't be going so high from these corners as you will see in this POV because they will be going from a lower start height. This is really then the crux of the track, this 8, 9, 10 section into curve 11. A few problems we saw in this first run with people being high on the end of 11, and then again coming into this curve 13, we saw lots of people making mistakes out of this corner, having problems down this straight as they come into this big Kreisel, and quite a few people hitting on the finish after this Kreisel as well.
Kreisel, you hear us say the word a lot. What it means, it's the German word for carousel. Carousel, and most of the tracks in the world, not all of them, have a 360 or 270 degree turn. Now, to your point a moment ago, Elsa, from the athletes I've spoken to, obviously all of the North Americans, but even a lot of the Europeans say that their families and friends will be coming to Whistler. So Whistler Tourism, happy to be charging those high rates.
That's so exciting to see, and the atmosphere of World Championships is just so exciting.
Yeah, the Village will be a great spot for the opening ceremonies 2 Wednesdays from now, and each evening's award ceremonies. Page 2, the last sleds to go are the leaders. As you see, the splits are not that tight among the top 3. But Elsa, it looks as if we've got 6 or 7 teams that could make their way onto the podium, depending on how things shake out.
As you said, the air is getting quite warm here. We're nearly at 10 degrees, the ice at minus 0.6. It held up really well in the first run, so we'll just have to see how well it's going to hold up on this second run and if that weather's going to play into these results at all.
Credit the Ice Meister, Andre Becker, not to mention track chief Rolf Heidenbruth and his staff. They've done a great job. 2 races here last year, 2 races here this year. So we've had some fun action as we get ready for run number 2, the final run of the day in Thuringia, the state in the middle of Germany. See what kind of music we can make, Elsa, because trivia for you, do you know that this area was the home of Johann Sebastian Bach?
I did not know that. I'm not a particularly musical person myself, but that is a fantastic fact for a pub quiz.
That is good. We don't hear a lot of Bach playing in the background amongst the poor Beatles covers, but maybe we will.
Maybe they should introduce that next winter.
Teenagers Panchuk and Mutz, Maxim and Andrea, both from Ukraine, as Ukraine will start off with the first 2 sleds in the doubles competition. A good look right here, Elsa, at the straps, and that's really the main responsibility for the bottom man.
Yeah, the start for the men, for the doubles, sorry, is quite technical. You've got to get 2 people pulling in time, and those straps will go from the elbow of the front man, and they will be what the back man is pulling to really get that power on through the handles. This team had quite a few problems in their first run, but their coach Taras at the finish seemed reasonably happy. As we've said, a very young doubles pairing, so they're just looking to gain experience on this World Cup. Looking much better through this 11-12 transition. Big problems there, though.
So they maintain contact with the sled. That's easier in doubles than singles because of the straps. We look for movement from the athletes. They look to get back on the sled in time for a finish, but I don't think they're going to make it to the line, are they?
They might if they keep lying down. They will obviously come last as if they do make it to the line. And just trickling there.
The clock disappeared, so officially they actually came in with a second run time of 1 minute, 0.998 seconds. So just a hair over a minute.
Such a disappointment for them. They were having a better run up until this curve 12. And this is where they just had too much height on the end, and it flipped them going into curve 13.
Second crash we've seen today, and coincidentally, the 2 crashes were the first sleds in each of the respective heats.
It can be quite tricky going off as the first sled, particularly in training if you're not used to being the first off your start height or used to having that routine of the person going before you. Particularly for these younger athletes, it can put you off a little bit. But the important thing is they look okay, they look like they weren't injured, and they did get a finish time, and they will get points on that leaderboard.
Now, briefly iced on the top of the track, their teammates, Igor Hoy and Nazarly Karchmar. They've been on the World Cup together as a team for the past 5 seasons. Hoy actually competed on the World Cup with a different partner for a couple of years before that. They're currently in 15th place in the World Cup rankings with very consistent results, 16th, 17th, 18th.
Far more experienced than their teammates, so we would expect them being iced out on the start not to have a huge impact on them. Looking nice through this top section. Coming into this tricky 8, 9, 10 section. A little bit of height on the end of their 11, but managing it really well.
Well out in front of the time of their teammates even before the other Ukrainians had the problem down below, and now they open up what's going to be about a 2-second lead or a second and a half down here. Well, make that an 18-second lead. Forgot about the crash.
That was a really clean run for them. Not quite finding the time that they might have wanted, but really good, solid sliding from these athletes.
The 2023 World Championships were held on this track. The doubles competition, incidentally, was won by Egert and Benniken, since split up as Sasha retired. We'll see Tony Egert a little later on in this race.
Interestingly, at those World Championships, the women's double went from a lower start height. So it's only been in the last couple of years the women's double has come up to match the start height of the men's doubles on this particular track.
You bring up great timing on that point, Elsa, because we're headed to Whistler next, and they famously and justifiably moved those start areas for all three disciplines down following the tragedy in 2010. But there has long been talk and increasing talk that at least in some of the disciplines, they can move back up. What's your take?
I think there's a challenge there because the sleds are getting faster, and particularly on the men's side, we are seeing the tracks being really at the limit of the speeds that they can take with the speeds of the sleds that we're now seeing. Lots of these tracks were not designed for those sort of speeds. And even when that Vancouver track was built, the sleds were significantly slower than we see now. So I suspect we're not going to see them moving up, particularly from a safety point of view, anytime soon. And interestingly, for the mixed event on the singles in Whistler, the men will be going from the women's start height.
Okay.
The young Latvian team here putting together a nice run so far. They are in the green.
This young team is Baltgalvis and Jaks Boga, 19 and 18 years old.
A really nice line out of curve 13 there. Just keeping the head up, wasn't able to stretch back and relax like we'll have seen with some of the other teams, but keeping the lines really clean.
They did something similar in run number 1 with that hard hit right before the finish stripe. That's not that costly time-wise, and certainly not an issue here on a weekend with no team relay.
I'm not sure if we will be seeing this young pairing in the mixed event tomorrow.
Let me give you an answer on that. So with Latvia, yeah, we have 2 Latvian teams scheduled to go in mixed doubles tomorrow.
So this is where that problem on the exit of that Kreisel is going to become an issue, because it's quite a long way up that finish straight, the paddle, and there's a lot of time to be lost between the finish line from these events today and where that paddle's going to be tomorrow.
A pair of 24-year-olds from China, Sakaya Jubai and Shoi Hu. So far this season, they've been at every World Cup race with the best result, a 12th place finish in Altenburg. That's a very good result on a very challenging track for a very young team.
And they also got some medals within the Nations Cup this season, which is really great for them from a building perspective. And I'm sure they will be very excited to be having a home track competition in China at the end of season. As we said in the first run for this pairing, the backman is carrying an injury, so only one person paddling on the start. They will have lost time from that start, so they'll just be looking to keep the run clean as they're doing to the finish.
700s up at that last, but this could turn red as they're now down to 200s. It's going to be very close right here to the finish line.
Will they get it? Just dropping back behind the Latvians. They were a little high at the end of that curve 13, just a little bit of height. They've controlled it really well, but that will have lost them some time.
So that celebration by the 2 young Latvians in the finish is very telling, Elsa, because, you know, we concentrate on the podiums and the World Cup points, but for some of these athletes early to go in run number 2, moving up one spot obviously helps their pride. It may help some sort of bonus they have set up with their federations. There's a lot at stake from top to bottom.
That's true, and this is a sport with so many factors. There's technology side with the sleds, there's facilities, there's the actual sliding, there's the starts. And so for each individual pairing and each individual athlete, you're going to have different targets. For me, I'm not aiming to be number 1 in the world because I know with the sled technology and things that I have, it's not possible. So we aim for our own targets, and for those Latvian men, that was clearly a good result.
Here are a pair of Slovakians who finished in the top 6 at the Youth Olympic Games in Lillehammer back in 2016 and have been on the World Cup pretty much ever since. Tomas Overchak, Maciej Zumi.
Great to see this pairing consistently on the World Cup circuit. Putting together a really nice run.
Pardon me, yep, they had a top 10 in Sigulda. Another good result on the tough track.
Sigulda, a track that Slovakia typically do quite well on, and we've seen that over the last few years, but they are putting together a really clean run here, and they are 6/10 ahead of the Latvians, which is something I think they can be very happy with.
Nicely done, a 41.985, which is about 0.2 of a second, or 1500ths quicker than their first run.
Yeah, you're correct. That was a better run than their first one. Really keeping it clean. They should have some nice lines on this track on this run. And unfortunately, we will not see them tomorrow in the mixed event as the Slovakian women's double are not here this week. And although they can do mixed nations, which is one of the fantastic things about the mixed event, there are no women's doubles from nations that don't also have men's doubles at the moment. So there is no one they compare with.
Sure. And we move now to two Italian teams going back-to-back, as they did in run number 1. Although I think all 4 of these athletes would tell you they'd rather be going a little later on here in the second heat. It's Nagler and Malaya to be followed by Rieder and Keinswaldner, 13th and 12th place for Italy after the first run.
Not in the position, as you said, where they'd want to be coming into this run.
Some good hard paddles for these former natural track athletes. Let's see if this is the fastest start time. It is so far, 7.319, fastest of run number 2.
Italy just struggling a little bit to find those podiums this year. We haven't seen the Italian team producing the results that we have in the previous seasons.
You know, that's been true across the board until Dominic Fischnaller broke onto the podium a few weeks ago. There had been no singles or doubles podiums for Italy. Now, since then, Andrea and Marion have made it onto the podium.
Really nice exit there of curve 13, looking clean down here.
They do across the finish line and a half second up on Slovakia. Nagler and Malaya into the lead.
Just shows how much time they lost in that first run with those problems.
But if you look at those split times coming up, the next 4 or 5 sleds, the other Italians, the Americans, Poland, Canada, these guys could ride up for a while.
And we saw mistakes from a lot of these teams in the first run. A lot of these doubles didn't have clean runs. So if they can keep it clean in these second runs, it could be interesting to see how these teams shuffle around. Just stretching back there, putting the head back, really gaining that speed in the bottom section.
Italy bringing 2 athletes or 2 teams to World Cup doubles, 2 teams in Women's World Cup as well. And we've had some weekends where Italy's had 3 in the Women's World Cup event. Here is the second team. Emanuel Rieder and Simone Keinswaldner. 2 former singles athletes, as we talked about in run number 1 from the Youth Olympic Games back in 2012, the first ever Youth Olympics. That was in Innsbruck. Did you take part ever, Elsa, Youth Olympics?
Unfortunately not. No one born in 1997 actually got a Youth Olympics because there was some changes in the age requirements.
Interesting. You got shut out, but you did actually go to the last Youth Olympics as a coach.
That's true. I went with Lily, a junior Irish athlete in Korea. So going back to Korea this year, that was the last time it was used internationally, was for those Youth Olympics. Already dropping back into the red behind their teammates. This team definitely not producing the results they'd be wanting to on this track this week.
To the finish line, the Italians in 10th place in the World Cup standings. They'll likely be out of the top 10 today. They finished 10th last time we were in Oberhof. Obviously not a track to their liking.
No major issues on that run there, a few small mistakes, but just I wonder if there's a sled setup issue. Really struggling to find their speed on this track. Little hit there before curve 12.
All right, look out for this next team over the next few weeks or so. The lone entrant from Canada. Final run of the season in Europe for Devin Wardrope and Cole Zajanski, who will not take part in mixed doubles tomorrow. They've been making progress over the last couple of weeks, including 2 straight podiums in Nations Cup. And significantly, their best ever World Cup finish was a 4th place, just 0.02 of a second off of the podium. And that was in Whistler, where we are next headed for the biggest event of the year.
And I believe for these athletes and all of the Canadian team, Whistler will be their last race of the season. I don't think the Canadian team are coming out to the Asian races at the end of the winter.
And I know that the International Federation is helping fund a lot of the Asian trip to induce teams to go there. But for Team Canada, it's probably just a case of their rebuilding plan with so many young athletes.
A couple of small problems for this pairing. They had some issues in the tricky 8, 9, 10 sections, just dropping back into the red in this lower section, but a nice exit of curve 13.
They lost about 1/10 of a second down there in the bottom, so as projected, Nagler and Malaya are beginning to pick off a couple of sleds, and there'll still be maybe a couple of more victims coming up.
A lot of the teams that are skipping the Asia circuit, I believe, are going to try to get time on the North American tracks, which are going to be crucial for the Olympic qualifications next season. Just hitting early there into curve 11.
Right, to Elsa's point, 2 of the first 3 events next year will be held in the USA in Park City and Lake Placid. Making our way now to the top 10 here in Oberhof, Germany. There are the leaders from Italy, Nagler and Malaya. I'm Tim Singer, along with part-time luge athlete, part-time luge coach, part-time commentator, and full-time medical doctor, Elsa Desmond. And Elsa, Poland is in the house.
Quite an experienced double. Had a little bit of problems in their first run. They'll be looking to clean that up on this second run.
Wojciech Chmielewski, Jakub Kowalewski. Easy to pronounce, not easy to get from top to bottom, fast and off of the walls.
We will be seeing this double again tomorrow in the mixed event, as they do have a women's double from Poland as well.
Right, the women did well earlier today. Domovic and Popkowska.
Putting together a nice run here so far. Looked like they were just a little bit early into that curve 12 and managing that exit well. He tried to press his head back, but then had to lift it up just to make sure he got that good entrance to the Kreisel.
Poland just falling out of the top 10 for a moment. So again, Nagler and Malaya pick off another. They've moved up 3 spots into the standings. They've been on the podium before, so the celebration is somewhat restrained. But still, it's always nice to ride that elevator in run number 2 of any race.
Polish team looking reasonably happy at the finish there. Obviously, they would have wanted to come down in first place, but they put together a solid run. Getting this nice early entrance across into curve 13.
One of the great traditions here in Oberhof, the fist bumps with the spectators trackside at the outrun. You don't want to give a high five because of those spikes on the glove, but the fist bump, no problem.
And fantastic to see those crowds out here in force.
They love it, and I love seeing the athletes, even some of them when they've had a disappointing run, but they show their class and their sportsmanship by welcoming the crowd. 2 American teams in today's second run, 9th and 8th place respectively. First up, the junior world champions, Marcus Mueller and Ansel Haugshaw.
A pairing of athletes that are really just gaining this experience on the Senior World Cup circuit. Looking clean so far, particularly through this tricky section.
Well, they're the first team to move away, pull away a little bit from the Italians at 0.2 of a second, and not a bad exit here of 13.
Looking very clean. They are losing time though in this bottom section, but just enough to keep the lead.
Yeah, by 1/10 of a second. Mueller, one of 3 athletes named Mueller in today's race, none of them from the same country.
A very common surname amongst lugers, that's for sure.
Definitely. It's like the Hoobers of the 21st century.
You could just see those straps on the start there as that back man is contributing to the pull. A really nice run there for this team.
Making slow progress in this, their first World Cup, and all bets are off. No one really has a home advantage when we hit to Whistler. The Canadians, obviously, that's their own track, but I think we're going to see the wealth spread a little bit on the World Championship podium as we move to the 8th place team after run number 1, also from the United States, Zach DiGregorio, Sean Hollander.
USA, another team that I believe aren't taking all of their athletes out to Asia. I think they're just taking their top 2 men, top 2 women, and the top of each of their doubles. I don't think all of their athletes are coming to that circuit, so it'll be interesting to see how that affects their overall points.
Any idea who that is screeching there up at the top? Maybe Sophia Kirkby?
It might well be. She is a fan of shouting on the start.
200ths of an advantage over their teammate. Now they fall behind their younger country mates. And
but back into the green, very close here.
This could be one of those fun little back and forth runs.
Let's see this next split. Oh, height there on the end of 11. Big problems going into curve 12. That will have lost them the time.
They were 5,000ths of a second back. Now they're 600ths, and it'll likely be a 10th or more. And they could fall behind the Italians as well. They do into 4th place, dropping 3 spots. It's USA over Italy, Poland, and then the Americans and Canadians rounding out the top 5 with 7 sleds still remaining.
And this will be interesting to see tomorrow with the mix event who they put into the different pairings. With the younger team getting a better result, will that mean they go into the USA 1 team tomorrow for the mix event?
And that's what happened in Lillehammer, I believe, where Mueller and Haugshaw actually took a podium position with Forgan and Kirkby.
So we'll see what decision the USA coaches make. I believe that there's a number of factors that go into those decisions for the USA's team.
Last week in Altenburg, that man saw his World Cup all-time record of 54 career victories bettered by the Tobies. Of course, 53 or all 54 of those wins by Egert were with Sasha Benniken. He has 1 win with his new partner, Flo Mueller. They're both from here in the Oberhof region and now on course. They made a number of mistakes, Elsa. It was surprising to even see them in the top 7.
Yeah, not the cleanest first run from them. As we were saying, both Tony and Diana with new backsliders on their doubles this season. Both teams just struggling to find their consistency and their rhythm with these new pairings. Little high there on the end of curve 11. Managed it well, though. And again, these same problems in the straight.
Huge advantage. They'll have no problem staying in the green and keeping the lead, but whether or not they hurt their chances to move up a few spots remains to be seen. So also, we have a great question coming in from one of our viewers. They talk about how we often refer to people exiting curves early or late. So what does that mean, or does it mean something different on different curves?
So from an entrance to a curve, if the curve is going out to your left, an early entrance is that you are on the right side. So for example, this corner here that you can see, it's going around to the right. So an early entrance is that you're on the left side of the ice so that you hit the corner early. A late entrance is that you're on the right side of the ice on a right-hand corner, so you hit the entrance of the corner late. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's great. Said it better than I could. Yannick Mueller, Armin Frauscher, 6th place after run number 1, coming off of 3 consecutive podium finishes. All 3rd place, Sigulda, Altenburg, and Winterberg. They're on the outside looking in right now. In fact, they're not that far out of the podium, about 1,300ths.
Certainly with a clean run, this is a pairing that we could see moving up. Only 2,000ths back on the Germans on the start. And we know that the Austrians are able to pick up time in the bottom section. And we also saw some problems from the Germans in that 13-14 transition. So if they keep it clean, we'll see.
Sled's so quiet sounding here, midway down the track.
600ths back at the moment, putting down a good run here. Much cleaner exit there.
Yeah. This 800s is still a lot to make up. Of course, the Germans, as you mentioned, had the problems there. and they actually lose a little more time. So sort of a Tony Agert of old, where he made it exciting with near hits here and there, but found speed below.
Yeah, good run there from the Austrians, but just not enough to catch the Germans. Interesting to see how far Tony is able to move up with that run.
Well, they were only 200ths behind this team after the first run, Tony and Florian. It's another 300ths to the next Austrian team, then another 300ths or so. But since their advantage is 1/10 of a second, to answer your question, they could move up quite a bit.
The times were really quite spread out after this first run, more so than we often see at races.
Now the second of 3 Austrian sleds in the top 6 after run number 1. The world champions, Juri Gott, 23 years old, from Innsbruck. His teammate, Ricardo Schoff, also 23, also from Innsbruck. In fact, they were born in the same city, about 5 weeks apart.
That's amazing to be racing with someone that's so close in age to you. Already in the red here. Putting together a clean run though. Ooh, little problem there on the entrance to curve 11. 800ths behind at this split.
Now the big exit of curve 13, a little bit of steering and still veering a little bit, looping.
All of that steering will have cost them some time down at the bottom.
So Tony and Florian now make their way into the top 5, which will equal their best result since their victory on the opening weekend in Lillehammer.
I'm sure they'll be enjoying these few weeks of wearing that bib before trying to compete to get it again.
Yeah, that's right. That's a symbol of pride to be the world champion for a year. And Lisa Schulte briefly gave up the bib 2 weeks ago when she became the World Cup leader and opted for that bib because she had never been the World Cup leader.
Of course, you have the option of which one you want to wear.
Yes, it's a nice problem to have, right?
Absolutely, it is.
Final team from Latvia, Martins Bots, Roberts Plume. They've stayed pretty quiet, but the results have been distinguished with 4 podiums. Their worst finish of the year was here in Oberhof back in December with a 7th place finish. All the same, they're in 2nd place in the World Cup standings, just 9 points behind the Tobys. And they'll likely stay in 2nd place if they can protect their position here in run number 2.
And this is a double that change in how the seeding's done for World Championships will have a big impact on, because they will be able to use that Segolda race in that seeding for the World Championships.
That's right.
Some slightly rough transitions there, but looking clean.
It's tight though. They're losing a bit, just 200ths of a second now.
How is this exit? A really nice exit there of curve 13, but head still a little bit up as he looks for that Kreisel entrance.
They do hang on. It was very tight. These two teams were basically neck and neck for the final 5 or 6 curves of the race. No change in the differential.
You can see they're happy with that. So close on the finish, only 2/10 differentiating them. Definitely a redemption race after their last race here in December.
I believe that guarantees them that they'll stay in the top 2 in the World Cup overall standings heading to Whistler.
It will be interesting to see what happens when we get to Asia. So many of these teams having never been there, anything really could happen looking at those overall points.
2 fascinating tracks too. Look out for corner 9 in South Korea and the Dragon in Yangqing, Beijing, China. Podium time, 600ths of a second advantage from one Austrian team over the Latvians. Thomas Stoy, Olympic medalist from China in doubles. Wolfgang Kindl, Olympic medalist from China in singles. They teamed up last year. They won the World Cup overall, and now they're looking for another podium finish. It would be their 4th of this season.
Kindle, currently one of the busiest men on the circuit, as he's doing both singles and doubles.
That actually used to be the rule and not the exception. Most of the athletes in the sport, men, competed in both week in and week out. Not most, but at least half.
They are safely in the green here. Slightly early transition there into curve 11. 900ths ahead at this split. Very clean exit there, pressing the head back, able to stretch out. Big loop there in the Kreisel.
They are on the podium. That's a guarantee for Stoy and Kindle. It is at least their 4th podium. Their previous 3 all being 3rd places this year. That will possibly move them. In fact, it probably will move them into the top 3 in the World Cup standings. So a great showing, really consistent. You know, Elsa, they've only been on the podium 3 of the 7 races, but the other 3 results were 4th place finishes. Nice problem to have if you're not on the podium.
Such a great result for them. As you said, so consistent this season, which is really great to see. And just the whole Austrian team really producing some really strong results this winter. Guaranteeing themselves a medal there.
Now we have 2 German teams battling for gold and battling to stay ahead of the Austrians. Hannes Arlemunder, Paula Gubitz. They inherited the number 3 spot in Germany 3 years ago from the team of Goike Gam. Going back to 2016, they were on the podium at the Youth Olympics, so their partnership is nearly a decade and counting. And that counts for a lot. In fact, their 1 World Cup victory in the 2-run races was here in Oberhof, their home track, last month.
They will have so many runs down this track. They'll just be looking to use that muscle memory, relax, and keep it clean.
They only had about 500ths up on the Austrians to start the run. They've opened that up to 900ths. They were about as beautiful from top to bottom drive lines we saw in run 1.
And increasing their lead here even more. 1200ths ahead now at that last split. Just tapping that right wall. Problems here coming into the Kreisel, but I think the track isn't long enough for them to lose the time now.
And Germany is guaranteed the gold medal on their home track in Oberhof, their first win of the day in 3 races. What we don't know, of course, is which German team it will be. Orlamanda and Gubitz have the lead, but Wendel and Alt are waiting, the final sled at the top.
And that is definitely not a sled to be underestimated. Really nice run here from these guys. Very, very clean. You can tell they have the experience here. You can tell that they've had the runs here. Some problems coming into the Kreisel here just at the end of this straight. They tap this right wall and then a bit of overcorrection here, but not much time lost.
Well, just when you thought there were no more records to break for these 2 Bavarians, last week they won World Cup number 55. They're already the all-time winningest Olympic athletes in the sport of doubles luge. And earlier today, in taking the lead in run number 1, they broke records not only at the finish, but at the start as well. The rich keep getting richer, and now the run for another World Cup victory, Toby Wendel and Toby Alt of Germany.
Will this be another start record? Not quite for them.
A 7:26 is 300ths off of the record they set an hour ago.
They have 1700ths ahead at this split, so it is theirs to lose at this point. They just need to keep it clean.
Sure, and one thing we've learned today is minor mistakes can still keep you in the hunt. It's the major mistake you want to avoid.
Nice exit there of curve 13. 700ths ahead. They have lost time.
They've lost a lot of time, but they hang on. 200ths or more, 2000ths they pick up down at the bottom. Another week at the office for Tobias Wendel and Tobias Alt, as they've been doing for the past 15 years. They race to victory, career win number 56, and they're heading to the World Championships on as high a high as any two athletes can be.
Germany 1-2, Austria 3. Still races left for these pairings tomorrow as they've got the mixed event, so still more medals they can try for, but what a result for them.
There was a time where they were cheered here in Germany, but they were sort of cheered after the Thuringians, Zegert and Bennekin, who those two teams had a bit of a rivalry for many years, but now everyone's embracing the greatness of the Tobis.
Beautiful exit there. So relaxed down that straight, just peeking up to look at where the entrance is. But absolute textbook sliding.
Never gets old for these two. Even when they're not sliding, their families spend time together. They play golf together. They grew up, as I've said many times, as close to a... We have a lot of lugers on the circuit that are really, literally are married, but the Tobis are as close to a different married couple as you can get. Hugs from Patrick Leitner, the head coach of Team Germany.
And the retired head coach of Germany, Norbert Lock, is also here somewhere in the crowd as well this weekend.
0.06 of a second was the advantage over their German teammates. Austrians in third, then Latvians, and a look at the other nations with a great story being Team Poland, finishing today's competition in the top 10. And as we look at the rest of the results, Austria has, let's face it, been the dominant nation. No one's arguing that this year. But in men's doubles, all but one race so far this year has been won by Germany, or all but two, but those two races were won by the Latvians. So we'll await World Cup standings. The Tobis will increase their lead. I believe Latvia stays in second, and then Stoy and Kindle jump ahead of Egert Mueller into third place. Elsa, as we wait interviews, any words? And those are those standings as promised. And any preview what viewers should be looking out for tomorrow in the mixed event? I'm sure a lot of people will be seeing it for the first time, the mixed singles and mixed doubles.
So the interesting elements will be on the start. We have the reaction start for the women, something that women traditionally haven't done. It's only come into the relay for the women this season. So that's a very exciting element, trying to get off the start as quick as possible and then hitting that paddle at the finish as well, particularly for small nations that aren't used to the relay paddle. That's going to be really exciting.
Well, I'm sorry you won't be alongside to commentate that race with me, but I'm thrilled that you'll have the opportunity to compete, you alongside Team Japan's Seiya Kobayashi in mixed singles. So I want to wish you the best of luck.
Thank you, Tim.
We'll let you go. We'll let you start preparing for that. That's our regular co-commentator from Team Ireland, Elsa Desmond, as we stand by and we still await the awards presentations. And we've got interviews coming up in just a moment. In the earlier two races, we had teddy bears or snowmen, stuffed snowmen given out. Now we've got flowers. I'm trying to keep track this year. We've had headbands, we've had bunny rabbits, we've had chocolate, and man, maybe some maple syrup when we get to Canada in 2 weeks. Our crack FIL production team preparing some highlights for you right now of the top three, as Patrick will stand by to hear from all of these podium finishers. Third place today, the Austrian team of Olympic medalists, Thomas Stoy, who captured Olympic bronze with Thomas Kohler, and Wolfgang Kindl. In singles, he won silver in Beijing. Second place, home cooking for Orla Munder and Gubitz to successfully back up their other podium finish, a victory last month here in Oberhof. But it really doesn't matter where the track is. In Bavaria, elsewhere in Germany, or anywhere in the world, Wendel and Alt continue their greatness as perhaps the greatest ever in the sport of luge, any discipline. Spectators celebrating there. I see Diana Eitberger coming off of her podium finish earlier today in women's doubles. She's among the crowd enjoying the day. Men's singles and mixed singles and doubles coming your way tomorrow. Down to the Austrians for the third place interview with Patrick.
Guys, congratulations being back on the podium again. After last week, it was not that easy. How do you feel being back on place 3?
Yeah, it was pretty good. The training week wasn't the best, but we get better and better every week and trying to get on the same level like last year. And I think it's the right time now for the World Champs.
Wolfie, how challenging was it for you after your crash last week?
Yeah, for sure. I'm not really happy. I have a lot of injuries, but I managed to be able to be in a good performance today together with Thomas, I think. We did really good job today. Depending on the training, it was not that bad, that good, but yeah, we're happy. I think back on the podium, we're really consistent for the whole season, and we're ready for the World Champs now for sure. Thanks a lot.
Consistent to say the least, with 3 third-place finishes, or 4 of them now, and 3 fourth-place finishes. Congratulations to the Austrians, who earlier today also won the races in women's doubles and women's singles. So we have some live interviews happening on German television with the top 2 finishers, understandably the Tobis as well as Orlamunder Gubitz. So some highlights of an exciting first day of action, and we'll leave it at that as far as our live streaming commentary. Thanks for all of you for joining in, especially those of you who have been around for the past 6 hours and 3 races. It's been great action, and that action continues tomorrow with the men's singles beginning at just about 4:20 Eastern Time, 10:20 local time. You won't want to miss that. So until then, for Elsa Desmond, our entire FIL television production crew, great pictures, great sounds, and great action on the ice, I'm Tim Singer. We'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for joining us.
Für das Publikum nicht ganz so doll wie für uns. Im ersten Lauf passiert uns die Vorsatzfehler am Start. Das sieht man nicht ganz so gut auf den Leinwänden. Wir kriegen oben leicht rechts die Bande, fahren dann super gerade auf die Startkurve und da fehlt uns der komplette Schwung. Im zweiten Lauf, naja, hat man gesehen auf der Geraden, die war nicht